Have you ever believed that wearing a white coat makes a person a god? There are doctors who do not work to save lives, but instead alter reports to cover up the sins of the wealthy. Such a man believed that decisions made behind closed doors would never see the light of day. But he forgot a simple truth of existence. When you wrong a person lying on their deathbed, destiny has a way of dragging you down to that very same bed to face your own judgment. Tonight's story is not about a simple betrayal. It is about a brilliant, calculating mind that used no weapons, no physical violence, and no traps other than the villain's own deepest, darkest fear. If you love stories where the ultimate truth dismantles a lifetime of lies, listen closely, because this story will completely shake you. Dr. Haroon was the undisputed chief of medicine at the city's largest and most expensive private hospital. He was an incredibly arrogant and greedy man who valued wealth, power, and high society connections far above the lives of the patients who trusted him. 10 years ago, the hospital was just a stepping stone for his greed. One rainy night, the only son of an extremely influential and wealthy businessman drove his luxury sports car while heavily intoxicated, crashing head-on into a poor, innocent pedestrian on a dark, empty street. The victim was left bleeding in the cold rain. The only witness to this tragic hit-and-run was Rahim, a humble, hard-working ambulance driver employed by the same hospital. Rahim did not hesitate. He rushed the dying man to the emergency room and was fully prepared to go to the police to testify against the billionaire's son. However, before the police could take Rahim's statement, the wealthy father arrived at the hospital. He met privately with Dr. Haroon, offering him an astronomical bribe, a lifetime of funding, and a promotion to chief of medicine if he made the entire case disappear. Driven by pure greed, Dr. Haroon accepted. He used his immense medical authority to forge a fake post-mortem report, claiming the victim died of a pre-existing heart attack rather than the collision, completely clearing the billionaire's son. But Rahim refused to stay silent. He threatened to expose the forged reports to the press. To silence him forever, Dr. Haroon executed a cold, calculated plan. He planted expensive, highly restricted experimental drugs in Rahim's locker and accused him of stealing them to sell on the black market. This single fabricated report and the planted evidence completely shattered Rahim's life. The hospital board immediately fired him in disgrace. His license was permanently revoked, and the police dragged him away in handcuffs. Broken by the sheer humiliation, the injustice, and the sudden loss of his dignity, Rahim's health quickly failed. He passed away in his cold prison cell just a few months later, his name dragged through the mud. He left behind a 12-year-old daughter named Zoya, who clung to his lifeless body at the funeral, weeping in absolute despair. Dr. Haroon, now the celebrated chief of medicine, drove past this cemetery in his luxury car, barely glancing at the crying child, convinced that his secret was buried forever. 10 years passed. Dr. Haroon grew old, but his arrogance, status, and wealth remained at their peak. He believed he was entirely untouchable, a king who had successfully built a fortress of lies. But then, out of nowhere, his body began to fail him. At first, it was just a slight tremor in his hands. Within weeks, it turned into terrifying episodes where he would suddenly gasp for air in the middle of the night, his chest feeling as though a heavy iron block was crushing his ribs. Panic-stricken, he secretly ran every advanced medical test and heart scan available in his own state-of-the-art facility. When the results came back, his world completely crumbled. The diagnostic sheets showed a severe, rapidly progressing cardiac decay, an extremely rare and highly fatal heart condition. In the entire country, there was only one specialist capable of performing the delicate, high-risk arterial bypass needed to save his life, a brilliant, world-renowned young surgeon who had recently returned from London, named Dr. Zoya. Desperate to escape his own mortality, Dr. Haroon immediately contacted Dr. Zoya. She agreed to take his case and met him in his private suite. She reviewed his files, looked directly into his eyes, and delivered a chilling verdict. His heart was failing at an alarming rate. He had less than 24 hours to live, and if the surgery was not performed by the next morning, his heart would stop forever. The overwhelming fear of death brought the proud, arrogant Dr. Haroon to his knees. He begged her to save him, promising her half of his entire fortune, completely unaware of who she really was. The next morning, Dr. Haroon was wheeled into the freezing operating theater. The bright, blinding surgical lights glared down at him, and the heart monitor beeped rapidly, echoing his chaotic, terrified state of mind. He was completely helpless, strapped to the operating table. As the medical team prepared the instruments, Dr. Zoya stepped closer to his side and slowly, deliberately pulled down her surgical mask. Dr. Haroon's breath hitched in his throat. His eyes widened in absolute shock and terror. The sharp facial features, the cold, piercing gaze, she looked exactly like Rahim. With a trembling, suffocated voice, Haroon whispered, asking if she was Rahim's daughter. Dr. Zoya smiled a cold, unforgiving smile and confirmed his worst nightmare. She was indeed that 12-year-old girl he had left crying in the mud 10 years ago. She had spent every single second of her life studying, working, and sacrificing everything to reach the absolute top of her field, waiting patiently for the day when his life would lie entirely in her hands. Haroon panicked, thrashing against the straps, trying to scream for the other doctors and guards, believing she was going to murder him on the operating table. But Zoya remained perfectly calm. Her voice cut through his panic as she produced a legal, notarized document and held it directly over his face. It was a complete confession of the hit-and-run cover-up and the fake theft charges he had manufactured to destroy Rahim. She gave him a brutal choice: sign the confession, or she would cancel the surgery, dismantle the medical team, and walk out of the room, leaving his weak heart to fail within minutes. Terrified of dying, crying out in sheer desperation as the monitor beeped frantically, Haroon grabbed the pen with shaking fingers and scrawled his signature onto the pad. He begged her to start the anesthesia, crying that his chest was about to burst and that he was running out of time. But instead of signaling the anesthesiologist, Dr. Zoya slowly took the document and stared at it in silence. The silence stretched for a long, agonizing moment. The only sound in the room was Haroon's frantic gasping. Slowly, Zoya reached over and switched off the oxygen and anesthesia machines. The hum of the life support died, leaving a suffocating quiet. Haroon watched in absolute horror as she picked up a long, gleaming, incredibly sharp scalpel from the stainless steel tray. He froze, convinced that she was going to carve him open out of pure revenge. He squeezed his eyes shut, weeping, waiting for the cold steel to tear through his flesh. 10 seconds passed. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. Nothing happened. No blade touched his skin. Slowly, trembling with fear, Haroon opened his eyes. Dr. Zoya was standing perfectly still, holding the scalpel, looking down at him with a calm, pitying expression. With a sudden, loud clatter, she tossed the scalpel back onto the metal tray. She then began peeling off her surgical gloves, one slow finger at a time, and stepped away from the table. With a steady, quiet voice, Dr. Zoya asked him how a renowned cardiologist and the great chief of medicine could forget a basic medical reality. She asked him how he could forget that certain rare, non-toxic chemical compounds, when slowly introduced into daily meals over a week, can perfectly mimic the exact physiological symptoms and laboratory results of terminal cardiac decay. Haroon stared at her, his jaw dropping as his mind raced. His heart was completely healthy. He was never sick. Zoya explained that she was a true surgeon who respected her oath, unlike him, and she had no intention of committing murder. Instead, she had spent the last 2 weeks using her resources to have his daily meals spiked with the compound, deliberately elevating his heart rate and manipulating his test results. She had simply used his own guilty conscience, his deep paranoia, and his supreme fear of death to force the truth out of his own mouth. At that exact moment, the heavy double doors of the operating theater swung open. The police, accompanied by the state medical board and the hospital's directors, walked into the room. Dr. Haroon, the man who believed he was a master of destiny, had walked straight into a psychological trap built entirely out of his own terror. His career, his medical license, his vast fortune, and his false respect were destroyed in a single second. He was arrested on the spot, dragged out of the hospital in front of his entire staff, and sentenced to a long, agonizing prison term in the very same federal cells where Rahim had lost his life. Truth had finally executed its code, proving that karma doesn't need weapons to destroy a fortress of lies. It only needs your own fear to tear it down from the inside. If this incredible story of psychological justice kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Revenge with Mesho. Let us know in the comments below if you think Dr. Haroon got exactly what he deserved. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in our next story.